Listen to the beginning of the book of Ruth. In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab. He took his wife and 2 sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from the land of Bethlehem in the land of Judah, and when they reached Moab, they settled there. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah, and the other a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone, without her 2 sons or her husband. We've talked about this story, this book of Ruth, being a love story and a story of loyalty and covenant and kindness, but it begins as a tragedy. Did you note the first line? In the time of the judges. Now, it's not too long ago that we studied Judges in our thoughts for the day, and it was a time of roller coaster blessing and curse from God, because Israel continually did what was right in their own eyes, and then God would send a judge to rescue them, to show that he could be trusted, that he was faithful to his people. But no sooner did he rescue them than the people turned away again and did evil in God's sight. And in the midst of this roller coaster of war and trouble and rescue from God, this story is a very human story. It begins with a tragedy. It could be a Hollywood story, and I'm sure it has been. But we need to pay attention to the details. There's a famine in Israel. Could that be because the Israelites are continually being disobedient to God? Maybe. But this family, they leave Bethlehem, they go to Moab, and then their children, the 2 sons, marry Moabite women, and that in turn is not recommended. It's not something God set out for his people, to marry outside of their tribe, outside of their people. Is that why they died? We're not told so. But what we do know is that Naomi has been left alone. I'm sure you know that days of gender equality, women's rights, feminism really hadn't struck in the Old Testament, and a woman alone, a woman with no husband and no sons, was in dire straits. It was necessary for her to find a kinsman redeemer. It was necessary for a member of her family to marry her, to provide for her, because there was no way that she could provide for herself, and she could be left destitute. What will become of Naomi? There's more of that story later. For now, I want you to concentrate for our thought today on how Naomi would have been feeling. She was grieving. She had no one to turn to. Who would provide for her? Who would keep her inheritance alive, her line, her hope? Who would she turn to for hope? But I want to point this out at the very beginning. In the middle of this tragedy, God is at work. Because you may not realize it yet, but this story of love and loyalty and covenant is going to be vital to the story of Jesus, the king in the line of David. How? Well, we'll get to that. For now, just take a moment to imagine Naomi. Imagine her life. Imagine how desperate she was. And we'll see where hope comes from in the next few days. See you tomorrow.